Hey guys, here is a quick tutorial on making a panorama using Photoshop. And yeah, you can do this in your camera, you do it in your phone. The advantage of doing this here is you can do it with RAW files. The images you see here in Bridge are JPEG, but that's just to keep the file size smaller. Alright, I would shoot this in RAW again. And just as a reminder, overlap your pictures. Shoot at least 4 or 5 images and make sure there's overlap so that Photoshop can stitch the images together. So I'm going to select these 4, shift clicking, right? Go to Tools, Photoshop. There's a bunch of useful things in here, by the way, but I'm just going to Photo Merge, right? And I'll go with Auto. You can try these different settings. It depends on what the scene is that you're photographing, whether or not it works. Auto works for this. I just say OK. Photoshop stitches. What it's doing is examining the images, sampling it, by small patches, and discovering where the images overlap. Finding out what's duplicates in the frames, and then putting it together. It's so nice. Alright, so then you get this stitched image, and again, it goes fast in this case because the JPEGs are small, but if you're working with large files, it'll go slower. It won't take forever, but it'll be slower. And then over on the right of my screen, you see here's the layers panel, and I've got 4 layers, and you can see masks. So Photoshop has made these masks to block out the parts of that image for the frame, that layer, that's not being used. So you want to merge these now. So you can do that 2 ways. You can go to this menu up in the top right here in Layers. That's that 4-bar thing. Click on that. Go down to the bottom. You'll see, in this case, you could do Flatten Image, but you can also do Merge Layers in this case. They're all highlighted. Merge Layers merges the layers that are highlighted in the layer palette, and they're all highlighted. If you do Flatten Image, it flattens everything that's visible in your workspace. But you can also see the keystroke there. Command E or Control E, depending on what platform you're working on. So just go Merge Layers. It flattens it out like that. So now you can see there are these checkerboards. That's the canvas up at the corners and down along the bottom edge. And I can deal with that in a couple of ways. I can actually do Transform and go to Edit, Transform, Warp. And I could take some time and drag this image around and have it fill out the canvas. I could do that. Right, I won't do the whole image, you get the idea. I'm just looking for these handles and dragging the image so I cover up the canvas. Alright, and do the left corners. I could do it that way. I could just crop out the extra stuff. So I go to my crop tool over in the toolbar, right, and pull in on the handles. I'll leave that. I'll go crop top. Crop. I do need to crop the left side. Just a touch right there. If you're trying to do very small incremental movements and you find Photoshop either wants to take you to the edge of the frame or take you to some point that it thinks you're going towards, if you press Control, you have this incremental control over the movement there. I'll drag down the top. And the right side looks okay, so I just press Return so I can deal with it that way. Right? I'll do Command Z to back out of that. And here's another way to go about that. I could take my Quick Select tool. It's the 4th tool down from the top. Could go in and select this image. And hopefully Photoshop will find the edge of the image. So you see the marching ants nicely going around the whole image and missing a little bit. So I'm checking out the edge of the sky here to make sure that Photoshop saw the edge of the picture, right? So now the marching ants going around the picture, right? And what we want to do is fill the perimeter of the canvas. So we need to inverse the selection, right? You can do that by going to Select and scroll down, and you'll see Inverse. And to the right you see Command-Shift-I. On a Mac, that is the keystroke. Right. It's Control-Shift-I if you're on a PC. To do that, and now I've got marching ants out around the perimeter of the canvas and around the image. But the fact that you have marching ants on the perimeter of the image tells me I've got the blank canvas selected. Okay, so I'm going to fill this by right-clicking on that selected area, and then I'll scroll down to fill. And then I'll choose, you have some choices here, foreground color, background color, or I can just fill it with black, white, gray, but there is this content aware. And if you select that, Photoshop will use what it knows about the image and duplicate out in the selected area what it found within the image. All right, so now the corners are filled out with stuff that was inside the photograph, and it looks pretty good. All right, I'll go Command D to get rid of that selection. All right, and if you showed this to the average person, they're kind of like, they wouldn't have a clue. You just stitched together 4 photographs. Right, looks pretty seamless. And in this case, it is pretty seamless. What you're looking for are redundancies. Like if I look up in this tree trunk here, and you can see that Photoshop has basically taken this dark part of the bark and reproduced it up here. All right, so honestly, I could get away with doing that, and nobody's really going to know. They'd have to be looking very closely to see that that has been basically cloned. But if I was really concerned about it, what would I do? I would take the stamp tool, the clone stamp tool. It's about halfway down, a little less than that, about a third of the way down your toolbar. Excuse me. And then, you know, and I could do some custom cloning in here. I could take this part of the bark, right, target that, and modify this a little bit up here. And so it looks a little bit different. There's a little bit of that happening down in the bottom right corner, but again, nobody's going to know it. Right? You'll probably, if you were to walk away from this image and then turn to it in 6 months, you wouldn't know that you'd just done that too. So, right, so then it all looks pretty good. Now it's pretty easy with a natural landscape like this because there are a lot of lines that are irregular and a lot of organic shapes. When you're dealing with geometric shapes, rectilinear stuff like architecture, then you probably have to do some more finessing to make it look reasonable. But, you know, you would figure that out, I hope. Okay, that's the basics of stitching together a panorama. I hope that's fun and you make some cool images. Thanks a lot.